At Sunday dinner, my brother asked the question he'd been saving all week. So, Jason, still single at 38? No girlfriend this month either. The table erupted in laughter. Mom wiped tears from her eyes. Dad slapped the table. My sister raised her wine glass like she was toasting a comedy show. 22 people around that table, and I was the punchline. I brought the wine. The expensive kind, the Bordeaux they requested specifically. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I set my glass down carefully, looked at my brother's smug face and said, "Tell everyone about your mortgage payment, Eric, the one due tomorrow. The one I've been covering for 6 years." The laughter died like someone had cut the power. For hours later, my grandfather showed up at my apartment with a leather briefcase that changed everything. Inside were documents that explained 38 years of questions I'd been too afraid to ask. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That night at dinner, I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there, and they'd been there my entire life. The view from my corner office should have felt like success. 42nd floor, downtown skyline. My name on the door with senior investment analyst underneath. I'm Jason Mitchell, and at 38, I'd built exactly the kind of career my parents always said they wanted for me. Morgan Stanley, 6 figures before I turned 30, partnership track before 35. On paper, I was living the dream. The corner office dream, anyway. The kind with glass walls and a view of the city and absolutely nobody waiting for me when I got home at night. My routine was efficient. Up at 5:30, gym by 6, desk by 7:30. I knew every barista's name at the coffee shop downstairs, but none of them knew mine. They called me the usual, which felt appropriate. Coffee, black, bagel, plain. No variations, no surprises. I'd optimized my life down to the minute, scheduled every hour, controlled every variable except the one that mattered. I couldn't schedule someone to actually want to spend time with me. Not for real. Not without the money attached. The apartment was 1,500 square feet of carefully curated emptiness. Modern furniture that looked expensive because it was. Art on the walls that I'd bought because the designer said it made a statement. I didn't know what statement. It looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas and called it profound. But it was the kind of thing successful people were supposed to have, so I had it. Just like I had the expensive watch and the luxury car and the tailored suits. All the markers of success, all the signs that I'd made it. And every night I came home to silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. My family loved reminding me about that silence. Every Sunday dinner, without fail, someone would mention it. Usually my brother Eric. He had a wife, 2 kids, a golden retriever, and a mortgage he couldn't afford. But he had the family, so he won. That was the math in my parents' house. Wife plus kids equals success. Money without marriage equals failure. It didn't matter that I'd given them over $800,000 in the last 15 years. It didn't matter that I'd saved Eric's house from foreclosure 3 times. What mattered was that I came to dinner alone, and they got to make jokes about it. I grew up understanding I was different. Not special different. Wrong different. The kind of different that made people uncomfortable at family gatherings. I was 7 the first time I noticed it clearly. We were at my cousin Sarah's birthday party. One of those backyard affairs with a bouncy castle and a clown that terrified the younger kids. My mother was holding court with her sisters, showing off baby photos of Eric. My aunt asked about photos of me. I watched my mother's face change. Not dramatically, just a small tightening around her eyes, a forced smile that didn't reach her cheeks. Jason wasn't a particularly photogenic baby, she said. Then she laughed, and her sisters laughed with her. I was standing right there, holding a plate of cake I suddenly didn't want to eat anymore. 7 years old and learning that my own mother thought I was ugly. Or that she was willing to say so publicly. I'm still not sure which was worse. My father wasn't cruel in the same way. He was absent in a way that felt intentional. He'd show up to all of Eric's basketball games, even the practices. With me, he'd check his watch during parent-teacher conferences, always ready to leave. I tried everything. I joined the debate team, made varsity, won state championships 2 years running. My father came to 1 match, left at halftime, and never mentioned it again. Meanwhile, Eric got honorable mention in a local art show and Dad threw him a party. I learned to read the patterns. Birthdays were a good indicator. Eric's birthdays were productions. Themes, catering, guest lists that required a spreadsheet. My birthdays were dinner at whatever restaurant I chose, which sounds generous until you realize I was choosing the restaurant because nobody else had planned anything. When I turned 16, I picked the place, made the reservation, and drove myself there. My parents arrived 20 minutes late because they'd stopped to pick up Eric's dry cleaning first. "We didn't forget," my mother said, kissing my cheek with lips that felt cold. "We just had so many things to do today." Eric's 16th birthday had involved a surprise party with 80 people. Mine involved explaining to the restaurant hostess why she should hold the table even though half my party hadn't arrived yet. My grandmother, my father's mother, was the only one who seemed to see it. She lived in a small house on the edge of town, filled with antiques and memories and the smell of lavender that clung to everything. I started visiting her every Wednesday after school. It started as an escape. It became the only place I felt seen. She'd make tea and we'd sit in her kitchen while she asked about my week. Really asked. Wanted to know about the books I was reading, the subjects I liked, the thoughts I was having. Nobody else asked about my thoughts. "You're a deep thinker, Jason," she told me once. I was 14, going through the worst of it. The age when you're old enough to understand you're being rejected but too young to do anything about it. Your mind is a gift. Some people can't appreciate gifts they don't understand. She squeezed my hand. Her hands were always warm, unlike my mother's. "Remember that, sweetheart. When they make you feel small, remember that you're not the problem. You never were." I didn't understand what she meant then. I thought she was just being kind. Grandmothers are supposed to be kind, especially to the grandchildren nobody else wants. But her words came with a weight I didn't recognize until much later. A sadness in her eyes that suggested she knew more than she was saying. I wish I'd asked her what she meant. I wish I'd asked a lot of things before it was too late. College was supposed to be different. I went to Northwestern, 4 hours away from home. Close enough for holidays, far enough for independence. Or that's what I told myself. The truth was, I was hoping distance would make them miss me. Didn't. I came home for Thanksgiving my freshman year to discover they'd rented out my bedroom. "We didn't think you'd mind," my mother said. "You have a dorm now, and we needed the space for your father's home office." Eric's room remained untouched, shrine-like. His high school trophies still on the shelves, his posters still on the walls. My room became a space for filing cabinets and a desk my father never actually used. I slept on the couch that Thanksgiving. The next year I stayed at school. Started making excuses. Too much work. Big project due. Can't afford to miss class. My mother never questioned it. I think she was relieved. I graduated summa cum laude. My parents came to the ceremony. They left immediately after, didn't stay for the reception, didn't take photos. Said they had to get back for Eric's baseball game. He was playing junior varsity. I was graduating from one of the best universities in the country. The baseball game won. It always did. That night, my grandmother called. "Congratulations, my brilliant boy," she said. Her voice was thick with pride and something else. Something that sounded like anger, but she was too gracious to let it fully show. "I'm so proud of you. So incredibly proud. Don't you ever forget what you've accomplished." I got the job at Morgan Stanley 6 months later. Started in an entry-level position and climbed fast. I was good at what I did. Reading markets, understanding risk, seeing patterns in chaos. It made sense to me in a way that human relationships never had. Numbers were honest. They didn't pretend to be something they weren't. They didn't promise to show up and then find something better to do. Within 3 years, I was managing my own portfolio. Within 5, I was being courted by competitors. By 30, I was making more money than I knew how to spend. That's when the family started paying attention. The first call came from Eric. Casual, brotherly. The warmth in his voice so unfamiliar I almost didn't recognize him. He wanted to get lunch, catch up, talk about old times. We'd never had old times worth talking about, but I said yes anyway. I was still hopeful then, still thought maybe things could change. We met at some overpriced restaurant downtown where the portions were tiny and the wine list was extensive. Eric ordered the most expensive bottle without looking at the price. "So, big shot investor now," he said, grinning. "That's incredible, man. Really. I always knew you'd do well." He'd never said that before. Never said anything that sounded like belief in me. I should have known better, but I wanted to believe him. Wanted to think that maybe my success had finally earned his respect. "Listen," he said, after the wine had been poured and the small talk had run out. "I'm in a bit of a situation. Nothing serious. Just a cash flow thing. The business is doing great, but you know how it is. Timing. I need about $20,000 to cover some expenses until the next round of payments come in." I wrote the check that night. He promised to pay me back in 60 days. That was 12 years ago. The 60 days turned into 90, then 6 months, then when things settled down, then never mentioned again. When I brought it up once, casually at a family dinner, my father looked at me like I'd committed a social crime. "Family doesn't keep score, Jason," he said. The implication was clear. Good people don't ask for their money back. Good people just keep giving. So I did. The requests became routine. Eric needed help with his mortgage. My sister Nicole needed money for her wedding. My father's car died and required a new transmission. My mother wanted to remodel the kitchen. Every few months, a new crisis. Every crisis, a dollar amount attached. And every time I paid. Because that's what good sons do. That's what success is for, right? Taking care of family. Making sure they're comfortable. Ensuring they never have to worry about money. I told myself I was being generous. I was really just buying time. Buying a seat at the table. Buying the illusion that I was wanted. My grandmother died when I was 34. Peacefully, in her sleep, which is what everyone says when they want to make death sound gentle. I was the first person at her house after the nursing home called. My parents arrived 3 hours later. They'd stopped for lunch first. "We were already out," my mother explained. It didn't make sense to waste the reservation. My grandmother, the woman who'd been the only source of unconditional love in my entire childhood, was dead. And my mother hadn't wanted to waste a restaurant reservation. The funeral was small. My grandmother had outlived most of her friends. I gave the eulogy because nobody else wanted to. Talked about her kindness, her wisdom, the way she made everyone feel seen. My mother cried. My father stood stoic. Eric checked his phone. After the service, we went back to my grandmother's house for the wake. The house felt smaller without her in it. Emptier. Like the walls knew she was gone and were already starting to forget what it felt like to be a home. My grandfather pulled me aside while everyone else was sorting through casserole dishes in the kitchen. My grandfather, my mother's father, who'd always been kind but distant, appropriate but not warm. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. "Your grandmother loved you very much," he said. "She worried about you. We talked about it often." He paused, and I watched him wrestle with something internal. Some decision he wasn't sure he was ready to make. "There are things you should know, Jason. Things she wanted to tell you, but she made me promise to wait. To let you live your life without the weight of it." He squeezed my shoulder. "If you ever need to know the truth, come find me. I'll tell you everything." I didn't know what he meant. I was too grief-stricken to ask. Too overwhelmed by the loss of the one person who'd made me feel like I mattered. I thanked him and went home and spent the next week working 70-hour weeks because work was easier than feeling. When I finally surfaced, the moment had passed. My grandfather didn't bring it up again. Life went back to normal. The expensive, lonely, carefully controlled normal I'd built for myself. The money kept flowing out. I tracked it all. I'm an investment analyst. Tracking is what I do. Over 15 years, I'd given my family $847,312. Loans that were never repaid. Emergency expenses that happened with suspicious regularity. Investments in Eric's various failed business ventures. I had spreadsheets, transaction records, a paper trail that documented every dollar, every request, every promise to pay me back that never materialized. I kept the records because that's what you do with investments. You track performance. And my family was a terrible investment. But I kept investing anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? Walk away? Cut them off? Then I'd be completely alone. At least this way I had Sunday dinners. At least this way I had somewhere to go on holidays. At least this way I could pretend I had a family, even if that family only called when they needed something. Even if every interaction was transactional. Even if I was buying my way into a space where I'd never really belonged. It was something. Something was better than the alternative, which was nothing. Or so I thought. The comments about my personal life got worse as I got older. When I was in my 20s, they were almost gentle. Asking if I was seeing anyone. Hoping I'd meet someone nice. By my 30s, the questions had sharp edges. Still haven't found anyone? Maybe you're too picky. At your age, you can't afford to be choosy. My mother started sending me profiles from dating apps. I made you an account, she announced one Sunday. You just need to put yourself out there, Jason. You're not getting any younger. I tried. God knows I tried. I went on dates. Lots of them. Downloaded all the apps. Filled out the profiles. Swiped until my thumb hurt. I met women who were successful, interesting, attractive. I took them to nice restaurants. Made conversation. Asked appropriate questions. Some of them agreed to second dates. A few made it to third dates. But it never went anywhere. They'd sense something was off. Something hollow underneath the success and the nice suits and the carefully maintained appearance of having it all together. You can't build a relationship on an empty foundation. And I was empty in ways I didn't know how to explain. How do you tell someone that you're 38 years old and you still don't know if your own parents love you? How do you build intimacy when you've spent your whole life learning to expect rejection? Nicole got married when I was 36. I paid for a third of the wedding. $17,000 for flowers, photography, and an open bar that her fiancé's family couldn't afford. I walked her down the aisle because our father refused to do it unless she agreed to have the reception at the country club instead of the venue she'd chosen. It's too expensive, he said, which was rich considering I was the one paying for most of it. Nicole chose the venue. I walked her down the aisle. Our father sat in the third row, arms crossed, making his disapproval known to everyone around him. At the reception, my mother gave a speech about how proud she was of Nicole for finding love. Some people are meant to be alone, she said, looking directly at me. But Nicole has always known what she wanted, always been brave enough to reach for it. The subtext wasn't even subtle. Nicole was brave. I was a coward. She had love. I had money. She won. I lost. The usual math. I left the reception early. Went home to my empty apartment and my expensive furniture and my art that made statements I didn't understand. Poured myself a drink I didn't finish. Stood at the window looking out at the city lights and wondered what the point of any of this was. The success, the money, the career that everyone said should make me happy. I'd done everything right. Worked hard, made smart decisions, built a life that should have been fulfilling. But standing there at 36 years old, I felt like I was still 7. Still the kid at the birthday party that nobody wanted to photograph. Still waiting for someone to think I was worth celebrating. My grandfather called me every few weeks. Just to check in, he said. See how I was doing. The calls were brief but consistent. He'd ask about work, about my health, about whether I was taking care of myself. Small questions that felt like he was looking for something bigger. Sometimes I'd catch him starting to say something, then stopping himself, like he was standing at the edge of a confession he wasn't ready to make. Your grandmother, he'd start. Then he'd pause. She would have wanted you to know how proud she was, how much she believed in you. I thank him, tell him I missed her, and we'd both sit in the silence of everything we weren't saying. The Sunday dinners continued. Every week, without fail, I'd drive to my parents' house in the suburbs, the house I'd paid to renovate, the kitchen with the granite countertops I'd financed, the new roof, the new furnace, the new deck. My money was in every wall, every fixture, every comfortable detail of their retirement. But I still knocked before entering. Still waited to be invited in. Still felt like a guest in a house I'd helped build. Eric would already be there, of course. He lived 10 minutes away but somehow always arrived before me. His kids would be running around, his wife would be helping my mother in the kitchen, and he'd be holding court in the living room, talking about his latest business idea, his golf game, his plans for a vacation they couldn't afford. And everyone would listen like he was sharing the secrets of the universe. I'd sit in the corner chair, the one nobody else wanted, the one by the window that got too much sun in summer and too much draft in winter. My seat, always available because nobody else would take it. I'd nurse a drink and wait for dinner and try to participate in conversations that never quite included me. They'd talk around me, over me, sometimes through me like I was furniture that had learned to respond when spoken to. "How's work, Jason?" someone would ask. I'd start to answer and someone else would interrupt with a story about their job, their life, their problems. And I'd fade back into the corner chair, back into the wallpaper, back into the role I'd been playing my entire life. The mocking started small. Little jokes, gentle teasing. "Still married to your work, Jason? When are you going to settle down? Don't you get lonely in that big apartment all by yourself?" I'd smile, make self-deprecating comments, play along with the joke because that's what you do at family dinners. You laugh at yourself so they don't have to feel guilty about laughing at you. But over time, the jokes got sharper, meaner, more pointed, like they'd realized I wasn't going to fight back, so they could push harder, see how much I'd take, test the limits of my desperation to belong. Last month, my father made a comment at dinner about my inability to maintain a relationship. "It's probably for the best," he said, cutting his steak with precision. "Some men aren't meant to be family men. They're meant to be providers. That's Jason. He's our provider." He said it like it was a compliment, like reducing me to my bank account was a form of praise. My mother nodded. "It's true. We're so lucky to have someone so successful in the family. Someone who can help when we need it." Eric raised his glass. To Jason, the family ATM. Everyone laughed, including me, because what else was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Demand respect? From people who'd never respected me? I laughed and I drank and I went home that night and didn't sleep. I started seeing a pattern in my bank statements. Every week, like clockwork, money going out. To my parents. To Eric. To Nicole. To various cousins and aunts and uncles who'd heard I was doing well and thought I might want to help with this problem or that crisis. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. And what had I gotten in return? Sunday dinners where I was the joke. Holiday gatherings where I was the cautionary tale. A family that called me generous while treating me like an obligation. I was the insurance policy nobody wanted to think about, but everyone was glad to have. And I was tired, so incredibly tired, of giving and giving and giving and never getting anything back except mockery disguised as affection. But I didn't know how to stop, because stopping meant being alone. And being alone meant admitting that all of this had been for nothing. Then came last Sunday, the dinner that changed everything. I should have known it was going to be bad. My mother had called 3 times that week to confirm I was coming. She only called multiple times when she needed something. When I arrived, the whole extended family was there. Uncles, aunts, cousins I barely knew. The table stretched the length of the dining room, packed with people who were celebrating something. I didn't know what. Nobody had told me. I brought the wine anyway. The expensive Bordeaux my father had requested. "Make sure it's the good stuff," he'd said on the phone. "We're celebrating." I walked in holding 4 bottles of wine that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Eric was already there, sitting at the head of the table like he owned the place. His wife next to him, his kids playing in the living room. Nicole and her husband. My parents at the center of it all, looking happier than I'd seen them in months. And there I was, standing in the doorway with my expensive wine, wondering what we were celebrating and why nobody had thought to tell me. "Jason," my mother called out. "You're here. Come in, come in. Set those down in the kitchen." Not hello, not how are you, just instructions on where to put the wine I'd brought. I was staff, not family, staff. I set down the bottles and took my seat, the corner chair, next to my cousin Mark, who I'd bailed out of a DUI charge last year. $2,000 for a lawyer. He didn't look at me when I sat down. The conversation was loud and warm. Everyone talking over each other, laughing, sharing stories. I tried to join in a few times. Started to tell a story about a client at work. My mother interrupted to ask Nicole about her remodel plans. I mentioned a conference I was attending next month. My father talked over me to tell a joke about golf. I gave up, just sat there and drank my wine and watched everyone else connect in ways I'd never been allowed to. And then Eric asked the question. The one he'd been saving. The one that would end everything. So Jason, still single at 38? No girlfriend this month either. The table erupted. Not polite chuckles. Full laughter. My mother was wiping tears. My father was slapping the table. My sister held up her wine glass like she was toasting the funniest thing she'd ever heard. 22 people around that table, and every single one of them was laughing at me. I felt something crack inside. Not break, crack, like ice starting to split. I'd spent 38 years holding it together. Being the good son, the generous brother, the reliable provider, taking the jokes and the mockery and the casual cruelty because I thought that's what family cost. Thought that belonging required sacrifice. Thought that if I just gave enough, loved enough, endured enough, eventually they'd see me as something other than the family joke. But sitting there, listening to them laugh, watching my brother's smug face, seeing my parents' delight in my humiliation, I realized something. I'd been sacrificing for people who'd never wanted me to belong in the first place. I'd been buying my way into a family that had been trying to get rid of me for 38 years. And I was done. So done. I set my glass down carefully, looked at Eric's smug face, at my parents' smiling expressions, at the 22 people who'd come to celebrate something nobody had bothered to tell me about. And I spoke. My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've finally stopped caring about the outcome. Tell everyone about your mortgage payment, Eric. The one due tomorrow. The one I've been covering for 6 years. The laughter stopped. Immediately, like someone had hit a switch. Eric's face went pale. His wife's smile froze. My mother's hand went to her throat. Jason, my father said, warning in his voice. The tone he used when I was a child and had embarrassed him in public. But I was done being embarrassed. Done being the one who had to shrink to make everyone else comfortable. 6 years, I continued. 72 payments of $3,417 each. That's $246,224. For those of you keeping track. I looked around the table, at the faces that had gone from amused to horrified. Should we talk about Nicole's wedding? The $17,000 I paid so she could have her dream venue? Or the remodel on this kitchen? I gestured around the room. $42,000. The deck out back? $28,000. The new roof 2 years ago? $31,000. My mother was shaking her head, making small gestures like she wanted me to stop. But I was just getting started. My father's car, my mother's medical bills, Eric's failed restaurant, his failed consulting business, his failed attempt at real estate investment, Nicole's husband's student loans. I have receipts. I have bank statements. I have every text, every phone call, every desperate plea for help over the last 15 years. $847,312. That's what this family has cost me. And you want to know why I'm still single? Maybe it's because I've been too busy being your personal ATM to have time for a personal life. The silence was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Someone's phone buzzed and they didn't reach for it. Eric opened his mouth and closed it again. My father's face had gone from shocked to angry, the kind of red that meant he was about to explode. But he didn't get the chance. Because right then, in that perfect moment of silence, the doorbell rang. My mother jumped. "I'll get it," she said, desperate for an excuse to leave the table. I could hear her in the hallway, the door opening, her surprised voice. "Dad? What are you doing here? We didn't expect you." My grandfather's voice, calm and measured. I need to speak with Jason. It's important. My mother tried to argue, said it wasn't a good time. My grandfather didn't accept the deflection. Now, please. I'd never heard him sound like that. Firm. Final. The voice of someone who'd made a decision and wasn't going to be talked out of it. I stood up, walked out of that dining room without looking back, without saying goodbye, without acknowledging the 22 faces that were staring after me. My grandfather was standing in the foyer, holding a leather briefcase that looked older than I was. His face was drawn, sad, resolved. "We need to talk," he said. "Not here. Come with me." I followed him outside. Didn't grab my coat. Didn't care. Just walked out into the October cold and got into his car. A classic Lincoln Continental that he'd maintained meticulously for 40 years. It smelled like leather and his cologne and something else. Something that reminded me of my grandmother. He drove us to his house in silence. Didn't try to explain. Didn't ask what had happened at dinner. Just drove with both hands on the wheel, watching the road like it required his full concentration. His house looked the same as it always had. Small, tidy, filled with furniture that had stories. He led me into the study, a room I'd only been in a handful of times. Dark wood paneling, bookshelves from floor to ceiling, a desk that looked like it weighed more than my car. He set the briefcase down carefully, opened it with a key from his pocket. Inside were papers, documents, files that looked decades old. He stared at them for a long moment before looking up at me. "Your grandmother made me promise," he said. "Made me swear I wouldn't tell you until I thought you were ready, or until you needed to know. Tonight you needed to know." He pushed the briefcase toward me. "Read it all. Every page. It will answer questions you didn't know you had. And it will explain why they've never treated you like family." My hands were shaking when I reached for the first document. "Why?" I asked. "Why didn't anyone tell me before?" My grandfather's eyes filled with tears. "Because your grandmother loved you too much. She didn't want you to grow up with this weight. Didn't want you to know that the people raising you never wanted you in the first place. She thought maybe if you didn't know it would hurt less. But it didn't, did it? It hurt anyway. It's been hurting you your whole life." I sat there in my grandfather's study, holding a manila folder that smelled like old paper and secrets. The label read Jason Birth Records in my grandmother's handwriting. Neat, careful cursive that I'd recognize anywhere. Inside was a birth certificate that looked official except for one detail. The name wasn't Jason Mitchell. It was Jason Brennan. Father listed as William Brennan. Mother listed as Catherine Brennan, née Sullivan. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the paper. "I don't understand," I said. My voice sounded small, like a child's, like the 7-year-old at the birthday party who just learned his mother thought he was ugly. My grandfather sat down heavily in his chair, rubbed his face with both hands, looked older than I'd ever seen him. "Catherine was my daughter," he said. "My first child. Your biological mother. She died when you were 6 months old." The words didn't make sense. Not at first. I tried to arrange them into something logical. "But my mother," I said. "Susan. She's your daughter. That makes her my aunt." He nodded. "Susan and Richard couldn't have children. They tried for years. Fertility treatments. Specialists. Nothing worked. When Catherine died, they took you in. It was supposed to be temporary, just until we figured out a permanent solution. But then they legally adopted you, changed your name, raised you as their son." The room tilted. I gripped the armrests of my chair to keep from falling. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" My grandfather's face crumpled. "Catherine made Susan promise, before she died. Promise to raise you, to love you, to give you everything she couldn't. And for a while Susan tried. For the first year she really did. But then Eric was born. Their miracle baby. The fertility treatments finally worked. And the moment she held him, something changed. You weren't her miracle anymore. You were the reminder of her sister's death. The obligation she'd taken on. The child she'd promised to love but never really wanted." He opened another folder, pulled out a stack of letters. These are from Catherine. To you. She wrote them while she was sick. One for every birthday until you turned 18. Susan was supposed to give them to you. She never did. I took the letters with hands that didn't feel like mine. 18 envelopes, each one labeled with an age. Dear Jason, on your first birthday. Dear Jason, on your second birthday. My mother's handwriting. Not Susan's. My real mother's. The one who died when I was too young to remember her face. I couldn't open them. Not yet. Not while my grandfather was watching. Not while I was still trying to breathe through the knowledge that my entire life had been a lie. The money, I said, random thoughts connecting. The money I've been giving them. Was that? My grandfather nodded grimly. When Catherine died, she left you everything. Her savings, her life insurance, the trust fund our parents had set up for her. $300,000, meant to be held in trust until you turned 21. Susan and Richard were supposed to manage it. Instead, they folded it into their own accounts, spent it on Eric's education, on their house, on themselves. By the time you turned 21, there was nothing left. So they never told you it existed. I thought I might be sick. The wine from dinner was sitting wrong in my stomach. The room felt too hot and too cold at the same time. That's why they've always hated me, I said. Not a question. A realization. I'm the evidence of their theft. The reminder that they stole from their nephew. That they broke a deathbed promise. That they took money from an infant and spent it on themselves. My grandfather's silence was confirmation. I stood up. Had to move. Had to do something other than sit there absorbing information that was rewriting my entire childhood. My grandmother, I said. She knew. All of it. And she never told me. He stood too. Reached for my shoulder but didn't touch it. Like he wasn't sure he had the right. She wanted to. Every day she wanted to. But you were happy, Jason. Or as happy as you could be in that house. And she thought telling you would only make it worse. Would only make you hate them more. She kept hoping they'd change. That they'd see what a remarkable young man you were growing into and regret how they treated you. But they didn't. They never did. I grabbed the briefcase. Shoved all the documents back inside without organizing them. Without looking at them. I needed to leave. Needed to get out of this house and this town and away from everyone who'd lied to me for 38 years. Thank you, I said. The words felt inadequate, insufficient, but they were all I had. For telling me, for keeping these, for... I gestured vaguely at everything. My grandfather stepped forward. This time he did touch my shoulder. Pulled me into a hug that smelled like Old Spice and honesty. Your grandmother loved you more than anything, he whispered. And so do I. You were never the problem, Jason. You were never anything but exactly who you were supposed to be. Remember that. Whatever happens next. Remember that you were loved. Completely. By the person who mattered most. I held on to him for longer than I meant to. When I finally let go, I felt steadier. Not better, but steadier. Like I'd found solid ground after years of walking on quicksand. I took the briefcase and I left. Drove home through streets that looked different now. Everything looked different. My entire life had been painted over with lies, and someone had just handed me the paint remover. My apartment felt foreign when I got back. Like I was seeing it for the first time. The expensive furniture. The meaningless art. The markers of success that I'd collected like armor against the feeling of not being enough. But I'd always been enough. I'd just been surrounded by people who needed me to feel inadequate so they could justify stealing from a child. So they could justify breaking a dying woman's promise. So they could sleep at night while they cashed checks that belonged to their dead sister's son. I spread the documents across my dining room table. The table I'd had custom made. That cost more than most people's cars. That I'd never had anyone over to eat at. Birth certificates. Adoption papers. Trust fund documents. Bank statements showing transfers from Catherine Brennan's account to Richard and Susan Mitchell's account over a period of 3 years. They drained it slowly, made it look legitimate. $50,000 here for educational expenses. $70,000 there for home improvements. all with the signatures of both adoptive parents. All completely legal because they'd been named as trustees. All completely immoral because the money was meant for me, and they'd spent it knowing I'd never find out, counting on my continued ignorance, betting that I'd be too grateful for being taken in to ever question why I was treated differently. They'd been right, until tonight. I opened the letters, all 18 of them, read them in order from age 1 to age 18. My mother's voice coming through on paper, speaking to a son she'd never get to watch grow up. Dear Jason, on your first birthday, you won't remember this, but you smiled at me today. A real smile, not just gas. The nurses all said it was too early for real smiles, but I knew better. You were laughing at something I said, even if you couldn't understand the words yet. I hope you keep that sense of humor. I hope you grow up knowing how to find joy in small moments. I wish I could be there to see all your moments. Your second birthday, your first day of school, your graduation. All the milestones a mother dreams about. But I won't be. The cancer is winning, sweetheart. The doctors gave me 2 months, maybe 3 if I'm lucky. So I'm writing these letters because it's all I can leave you. Words on paper. Instructions for being human. Love from a distance. I've made arrangements. Your Aunt Susan has promised to raise you as her own, to give you everything I can't. I believe her when she says she'll love you. I have to believe her, because the alternative is thinking about my baby boy growing up without anyone to love him, and that's not survivable. So I'm trusting Susan and Richard. I'm trusting that they'll tell you about me, show you photos, keep my memory alive. I'm trusting that they'll use the money I'm leaving for you. The trust fund that should give you opportunities one never had. College, travel, a start in life. It's not much, but it's everything I have. And it's yours, baby. Only yours. Never let anyone tell you differently. The letter went on. Details about her childhood. Stories about meeting my father, William, the man listed on my birth certificate who died in a car accident when my mother was 6 months pregnant. I'd never had a father. Just Richard, who'd spent 38 years making sure I knew I wasn't really his son. The letters for ages 2 through 10 were similar. Stories, advice, love poured onto paper by a dying woman who'd never meet the child she was writing to. But the letters from ages 11 onward got darker, more urgent, like she'd known something, suspected something. Dear Jason, on your 11th birthday, you're probably starting to feel different. Like you don't quite fit in. I want you to know that's normal. Feeling different doesn't mean you are different. It means you're paying attention. People who fit in perfectly are usually just good at pretending. You don't have to pretend, sweetheart. Not for anyone. Not even for Susan and Richard. If they make you feel like you have to earn their love, remember this. Love isn't something you earn. It's something you deserve just by existing. You deserved it the day you were born. You'll deserve it every day after. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. How had she known? Had she suspected Susan wouldn't keep her promise? Had she seen something in her sister that made her write warnings to a child who wouldn't read them until he was 38? I'd never know. All I knew was that she'd tried to protect me, had tried to give me ammunition against the feeling of unworthiness that Susan and Richard had spent decades cultivating. And Susan had hidden the letters, had made sure I'd grow up without my mother's voice in my head, without her warnings, without her love. That betrayal felt worse than the money somehow. The theft of my inheritance was criminal. The theft of these letters was evil. I read until sunrise. Every letter, every word. By the time I finished, I knew more about my mother than I'd ever known about the woman who'd raised me. Catherine had been funny, smart, optimistic even while dying. She'd loved music and bad puns and old movies. She'd wanted to be a teacher, had been halfway through her certification when she'd gotten pregnant. She'd planned to finish after I was born. But then William died, and then the cancer came, and all her plans had crumbled into letters she'd never get to see me read. Dear Jason, on your 18th birthday, you're an adult now, legally anyway. I doubt you feel like one. I didn't at 18. I felt like a confused teenager who'd been given too much responsibility and not enough instruction. Here's what I wish someone had told me. Being an adult doesn't mean having all the answers. It means being brave enough to ask the questions. It means failing and trying again. It means forgiving yourself when you mess up, which you will because everyone does. And it means surrounding yourself with people who want you to succeed, not people who need you to fail so they can feel better about themselves. I don't know what kind of person you've become. I hope you're kind. I hope you're brave. I hope you're happy. But if you're not happy, if you feel lost or broken or like you don't belong anywhere, know this. You belong to me. From the moment I knew you existed, you were mine. You were wanted. You were loved. You were everything. And nothing that happens in your life changes that. The people raising you might forget to tell you. They might be so busy with their own lives that they forget what it means to make a child feel valued. Forgive them if you can. But don't ever let their forgetfulness make you question your worth. You are worthy. You have always been worthy. You will always be worthy. Remember that when things get hard. Remember that your mother, who never got to see you grow up, believed in you completely. I love you, Jason. I loved you before you were born. I loved you every day of your short life. I will love you from whatever comes after this. Happy 18th birthday, sweetheart. Make it count. I sat there as the sun came up over the city, watching light flood my expensive apartment with its expensive furniture and its expensive emptiness. And I felt something shift. The crack that had started at dinner last night was splitting wider. But it wasn't breaking me. It was breaking open the cage I'd been living in. The one made of obligation and guilt and desperate need for belonging. I'd spent 38 years trying to earn love from people who'd promised a dying woman they'd give it freely. I'd paid $800,000 for the privilege of being mocked. I'd sacrificed relationships, time, happiness, all for a family that had never been mine in the first place. But my mother had loved me, my real mother, the one who'd died trying to protect me, who'd written me letters full of wisdom and warnings and unconditional acceptance, who'd left me money that was supposed to give me opportunities, money that had been stolen. But she'd loved me, and my grandmother had loved me, had kept these documents safe for decades, had convinced my grandfather to tell me the truth when the time was right. And they'd been right, about everything, about Susan and Richard, about Eric and Nicole, about me deserving better than I'd been given. I was done trying to earn love from people who'd never intended to give it, done sacrificing for people who saw me as an ATM, done pretending that blood made us family when respect was what actually mattered. I picked up my phone, started making calls. First call was to my accountant. Monday morning, first thing. I need you to close all joint accounts. Cancel all automatic payments to Richard Mitchell, Susan Mitchell, Eric Mitchell, and Nicole Peterson. Effective immediately. He tried to warn me about the implications, about the financial disruption. I cut him off. I don't care. Do it today. Second call was to my lawyer. Left a message since it was 6 in the morning on a Monday. I need to discuss a theft that occurred when I was a minor. Trust fund misappropriation. I have documentation. Call me when you're in the office. Third call was to my grandfather. Thank you, I said when he answered. He sounded tired, like he hadn't slept either. Don't thank me yet, he said. You haven't dealt with the fallout. Susan is going to fight. Richard will threaten. They're going to tell everyone you're being unreasonable, dramatic, that you're throwing away your family over money. I looked at the letters spread across my table. I'm not throwing away my family, I said. I'm walking away from people who threw me away first. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. Then, your grandmother would be proud, and so am I. Fourth call was to my assistant. Asked her to clear my schedule for the week. Personal emergency. She didn't ask questions. That's why I'd hired her. Fifth call was to my therapist. Emergency session. Today, if possible. She had an opening at noon. I took it. The rest of Monday was a blur. Meeting with the accountant. Walking him through the documents. Watching his face change as he realized what had happened. This is fraud, he said. Clear-cut. They had a fiduciary responsibility as trustees. They violated it. I nodded. I know. I want to know exactly how much they took and what legal recourse I have. He said he'd need a few days to compile everything. I told him to take whatever time he needed, as long as it was thorough. Meeting with the therapist was harder. I'd been seeing Dr. Richardson for 2 years, working through issues related to self-worth and relationship patterns. Turns out, most of my issues stemmed from being raised by people who'd stolen my inheritance and hidden my dead mother's letters. Who knew? I walked her through everything. The dinner, the confrontation, the documents, the letters. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "How do you feel?" I laughed. Couldn't help it. The question seemed absurd given everything I just told her. "I don't know," I said. Angry, relieved, grief-stricken, vindicated. All of it at once. "Is that normal?" She smiled slightly. "After what you've just learned, yes, very normal. You're grieving multiple losses simultaneously. The family you thought you had, the childhood you should have had, the mother you never got to know, and you're dealing with betrayal on a scale most people never experience. Give yourself permission to feel all of it. Don't try to organize it into something neat. Let it be messy." My phone started ringing around 3 in the afternoon. First was my mother. Susan, I couldn't think of her as my mother anymore. Not after reading Catherine's letters. Not after knowing what she'd promised and what she'd done instead. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "Jason, we need to talk about this. Whatever your grandfather told you, there's more to the story. You can't just cut us off like this. We're family. Call me back." I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Eric called next. I answered that one. "What the hell, Jason?" he said. No greeting. No preamble. Just anger. My mortgage payment bounced. "Do you have any idea what that does to my credit?" I kept my voice level. "Do you have any idea what $800,000 does to a bank account? Because that's how much I've given this family over the years. Money that I earned. While you spent money that was supposed to be mine. Money my real mother left me. Money your parents stole." Silence on the other end. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about." He sounded genuinely confused. Or he was a good actor. Hard to tell. "Ask Susan and Richard," I said. "Ask them about Catherine Brennan. About my trust fund. About the promises they made to a dying woman. Then call me back if you still want to pretend you didn't know." I hung up. He didn't call back. Nicole called that evening. Left a voicemail because I didn't answer. She sounded scared. "Jason, please. I don't know what happened. Mom is crying. Dad won't talk to anyone. Eric is furious. Please just tell me what's going on." I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But she'd been part of it too. Had taken my money for her wedding while knowing I was excluded from family events. Had laughed at dinner when Eric mocked me. Had never once stood up for me or questioned why I was treated differently. She hadn't stolen from me directly, but she'd benefited from the theft. And she'd never cared enough to ask why. I texted back instead of calling. "Ask our parents about Catherine Brennan. Ask them where my trust fund went. Ask them why they hid 18 letters from my dead mother. Then decide if you still want to defend them." She didn't respond. Tuesday morning, I met with my lawyer. Showed him everything. Birth certificates, trust fund documents, bank statements, Catherine's letters. He reviewed it all with the kind of focus lawyers get when they see a clear-cut case. "This is prosecutable," he said. "Not just civil. Criminal. They defrauded a minor. Violated fiduciary duty. I can have charges filed by end of week." I thought about it. Imagine Susan and Richard in criminal court. Eric testifying. Nicole crying. My grandfather having to watch his daughter face charges. What are my options? I asked. Besides criminal prosecution. He leaned back in his chair. Civil suit. Sue for return of the trust fund amount plus interest. Given the time frame, we're looking at somewhere around $600,000. Maybe more depending on how the court calculates damages. They'd likely have to sell their house to pay it. I thought about the house. The one I'd paid to renovate. The kitchen, the deck, the roof. All my money. Built on top of stolen funds. Do it, I said. File the civil suit. I want every dollar back. Wednesday, the family started showing up at my apartment. First was my father, Richard. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. He tried the guilt approach first. Jason, we need to talk about this. You're destroying this family. Over money. Is that really what you want? I didn't invite him in. Stood in the doorway and looked at the man who'd raised me without ever loving me. You destroyed this family the day you stole my inheritance, I said. The day you hid my mother's letters. The day you decided I was an obligation instead of a son. I'm just the first one with the courage to say it out loud. He tried to argue, said I was being dramatic, that I didn't understand the whole situation, that raising me had been expensive and they'd used the money for my benefit. For my benefit? I repeated. You used my money to pay for Eric's college, to buy him cars, to fund his failed businesses. You used it for everything except what it was intended for, which was me. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. We gave you a home, he said finally. We raised you when nobody else would, and this is how you repay us. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You didn't give me a home. You gave me a corner chair at Sunday dinners. You gave me the room that became an office. You gave me 38 years of knowing I wasn't wanted. The money you stole? That was supposed to give me opportunities. Instead, I gave you $800,000 of my own earnings. So if we're talking about repayment, I think you owe me about $1.4 million. Total. I closed the door in his face, locked it, listened to him stand there for a minute before finally leaving. Susan came Thursday, brought Nicole with her. They both looked like they'd been crying. Susan tried the emotion approach. Please, Jason, just come inside and talk to us. Let us explain. I thought about Catherine's letters, about the promises Susan had made to her dying sister, about the love she was supposed to give me that she'd given to Eric instead. There's nothing to explain, I said. You took money that wasn't yours. You hid letters that were meant for me. You broke promises you made to a dying woman, your sister, my mother, and you did it all while convincing me I should be grateful you didn't throw me away completely. Nicole stepped forward. We didn't know, she said, about the trust fund, about the letters. Mom and Dad never told us. If we'd known. I cut her off. You knew I was treated differently. You knew Eric was the favorite. You knew I paid for everything while getting nothing in return. You saw it. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every birthday where they forgot I existed. And you never once questioned it. Never once stood up for me. So don't pretend you're innocent just because you didn't know the specific details of how they betrayed me. Susan was shaking her head. We did our best. We gave you everything we could. I laughed. Couldn't help it. You gave me everything except what I actually needed, which was to feel like I belonged, to feel like I was worth something besides my bank account. Catherine knew that's what I'd need. That's why she wrote the letters, to tell me I was worthy, to warn me about people who'd make me feel otherwise. She knew you'd fail me, and she was right. The lawsuit was filed Friday. My lawyer called to confirm. They have 30 days to respond. After that, we move to discovery. This should settle out of court. No judge is going to look at this favorably for them. I thanked him and hung up and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just empty. Like I'd spent so much energy holding myself together that now, with the structure removed, I didn't know what shape I was supposed to be. I called my grandfather, told him about the lawsuit, about Susan and Richard showing up, about Nicole's tears and Eric's anger and the whole family falling apart in real time. How do you feel? He asked. The same question Dr. Richardson had asked. I gave him a different answer. Lost, I said. I thought cutting them off would feel liberating, but it just feels lonely, like I've traded one kind of pain for another. He was quiet for a moment. Healing isn't the same as happiness, he said finally. Sometimes it's just trading acute pain for chronic discomfort. The kind you can live with instead of the kind that's killing you. Give it time. The loneliness will feel different once you realize you're not actually alone. You have people who love you. Me, your grandmother's memory, and Catherine. She loved you more than life. That kind of love doesn't disappear just because the person is gone. I wanted to believe him. Wasn't sure I could. But I thanked him anyway. Saturday morning, I woke up to an envelope slid under my door. No postage. Hand-delivered. Inside was a letter from Susan, handwritten on the expensive stationery she used for special occasions. Dear Jason, I know you won't take my calls, so I'm writing this instead. You're right about everything. We did steal your trust fund. We did hide Catherine's letters. We did fail you in ways that can't be forgiven. But I need you to understand why. When Catherine died, I was devastated. She was my little sister, my best friend. Losing her felt like losing half of myself. And then there you were, this tiny baby who had her eyes, her smile, her entire face. Looking at you was like looking at a ghost. Every day you reminded me that she was gone, that I'd failed to protect her, that I'd lost the person I loved most. Richard and I tried. We really did. For the first year, I held you and fed you and loved you the way Catherine made me promise. But then Eric was born. Our miracle. The baby we'd been told we'd never have. And holding him felt different. He didn't remind me of death. He reminded me of hope, of second chances, of moving forward instead of staying stuck in grief. And I know it's not fair. I know you deserved better. I know Catherine would be horrified by how we treated you. But I'm telling you this so you understand. It wasn't about you. It was never about you. You were perfect. You are perfect. It was about me. My inability to separate you from my grief. My failure to love you the way Catherine loved you. The way you deserved. The trust fund money. We justified it at the time. Told ourselves we were using it for the family. That it was all going toward the household anyway. That you'd benefit from it indirectly. But that was a lie we told ourselves so we could sleep at night. We knew it was wrong. We did it anyway. And I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. Doesn't give you back your childhood or your inheritance or the relationship with your mother that we stole. But I needed to say it. You deserved better. You deserved everything Catherine wanted to give you. Everything she made me promise to provide. I failed her. I failed you. And I understand if you never forgive me. I don't forgive myself. Love, Susan. I read the letter 3 times, looking for the manipulation, the angle, the way she'd twist her apology into my fault. But it wasn't there. She was just taking responsibility, admitting failure, accepting consequences. It should have made me feel better. It made me feel worse, because now I couldn't hate her completely, couldn't reduce her to a villain in my story. She was just a broken person who'd broken me in turn, who'd let grief and selfishness override promises and decency, who'd justified small betrayals until they accumulated into something unforgivable. I didn't respond to the letter, didn't know what I'd say if I did. Sorry didn't fix anything, but neither did anger, neither did distance, neither did lawsuits or cut off bank accounts or any of the walls I'd built to protect myself. I was still Jason Mitchell. Still the kid in the corner chair. Still looking for belonging in all the wrong places. The only difference now was that I knew the truth. And truth didn't set you free. It just showed you the bars of the cage you'd been living in all along. Sunday morning, I didn't go to my parents' house. First Sunday in 15 years I'd missed. I stayed in my apartment and read Catherine's letters again. Trying to know her. Trying to understand the woman who'd loved me enough to write 18 letters from her deathbed, who'd set up a trust fund to give me opportunities, who'd tried to protect me from exactly what had happened. I found myself talking to her, out loud, like she could hear me. I wish I'd known you, I said to the empty room. I wish you'd lived. I wish you'd been there to keep them honest, to make them keep their promises, to love me the way you said you would. The room stayed quiet. Of course it did. She'd been dead for 37 years. All that was left was paper and memories I didn't have and a trust fund that had been stolen before I'd known it existed. But sitting there, reading her words, I felt closer to family than I'd felt in years. Because she'd actually wanted me. Not my money, Not my usefulness. Just me. The baby she'd carried and delivered and loved for 6 months before cancer took her away. And that mattered. Couldn't fix what Susan and Richard had done. Couldn't give me back the childhood I should have had. But it mattered. Monday morning, my accountant called with the final numbers. Over 15 years, you gave your family $847,312. The trust fund that was stolen, with interest calculated at standard investment returns, would be worth approximately $638,000 today. Combined, they owe you approximately $1.5 million. I thanked him and hung up and stared at the number he'd emailed. $1.5 million. The cost of belonging to a family that had never wanted me. The price of trying to earn love that should have been free. 15 years of my life reduced to a spreadsheet. Transactions and transfers and money that should have been spent on travel or hobbies or building a life instead of subsidizing people who saw me as an ATM. My lawyer thought we could win the civil suit easily. Recover the trust fund money plus damages. Force them to sell the house. Garnish wages. Destroy them financially the way they destroyed me emotionally. And I wanted that. Part of me wanted it desperately. Wanted them to hurt the way I'd hurt. Wanted them to feel the weight of consequences. But another part of me, the part that sounded like Catherine's letters, knew that revenge wouldn't fill the emptiness, wouldn't give me back what I'd lost, wouldn't make me whole. I'd still be Jason Mitchell, still be the man with the corner office and the empty apartment and nobody to come home to. The money wouldn't change that. The lawsuit wouldn't change that. Only I could change that by building something new. Something that didn't depend on people who'd never valued me. I called my grandfather Tuesday morning. I want to visit Catherine's grave, I said. Will you come with me? We met at the cemetery that afternoon. Small place, old trees, quiet in the way cemeteries are quiet. Not peaceful, just absent of noise. Catherine's grave was in the family plot, between her parents and her grandparents. The headstone was simple. Catherine Marie Brennan, beloved daughter and mother, and the dates, 26 years. That's all she'd gotten. 26 years and a baby she'd never see grow up. My grandfather stood back, giving me space. I sat on the grass in front of her grave and I cried. For the first time in weeks. For the first time in years, really. Let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The grief for the mother I'd never known. The anger at the family who'd stolen from us both. The loneliness of 38 years spent trying to belong somewhere I'd never been welcome. The exhaustion of always feeling like I wasn't enough. I cried until there was nothing left. Until I was empty in a way that felt clean instead of hollow. I read your letters, I said to the grass and the stone and the memory of a woman I'd never meet. All 18 of them. You were right about everything. About Susan and Richard. About me being worthy. About not having to earn love. I wish I'd read them sooner. Wish I'd known that someone thought I was worth loving just for existing. Maybe it would have saved me from giving 15 years and $800,000 to people who never cared. Or maybe not. Maybe I had to learn it the hard way. I touched the stone. Cold granite under my fingers. Thank you, I whispered. For the letters. For the trust fund even though I never got to use it. For loving me when nobody else did. For trying to protect me. I'm sorry I didn't get to know you. I think we would have been good together. My grandfather drove me home in silence. Didn't try to fill the space with words. Just let me sit with everything I was feeling. When we pulled up to my building, he turned to look at me. What are you going to do now? He asked. I'd been thinking about that question for days. I'm going to stop chasing people who don't want me, I said. Stop trying to earn belonging. Stop paying for the privilege of being treated badly. I'm going to finish the lawsuit because it's the right thing to do. Because they need to face consequences. But after that, I'm going to build something new. Something that doesn't include them. Something that feels like family instead of just being called family. He nodded slowly. Your grandmother would be proud, he said. And Catherine would be too. You're finally putting yourself first. That's all either of them ever wanted for you. I got out of the car, watched him drive away, went upstairs to my expensive apartment with its expensive emptiness. But it felt different now. Not empty, just quiet, waiting, ready for whatever I chose to fill it with. People who actually wanted to be there. Relationships that didn't require payment. Belonging that came from mutual respect instead of obligation. I didn't know what that looked like yet. Didn't know where to find it. But I was done looking in the wrong places. Done accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. Done settling for people who saw me as useful instead of valuable. I was Jason Mitchell, 38 years old, senior investment analyst, orphaned twice over. But I was also Jason Brennan, son of Catherine Marie Brennan, who'd loved me completely, who'd left me letters full of wisdom and warnings, who'd tried to give me opportunities and protection and everything a mother could give from a deathbed. And that mattered. More than the money, more than the lawsuit, more than 15 years of trying to belong to the wrong family. I was her son, and I was done apologizing for existing. The lawsuit took 6 months to settle. Out of court, like my lawyer predicted, Susan and Richard agreed to pay back the full trust fund amount plus interest. $597,000. They had to take a second mortgage on the house to afford it. The same house I'd paid to renovate. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Eric tried to call me once during the process. Left a voicemail apologizing, saying he didn't know about the trust fund. That he would have said something if he'd known. That he missed me. I didn't call back. Didn't believe him. Didn't care anymore. The chapter was closed. Nicole sent a letter, similar to Susan's, taking responsibility, admitting she should have questioned things, asking if we could talk, maybe rebuild something. I responded to hers. Short email. I appreciate the apology, but I don't think we have anything to rebuild. We were never really siblings, just people who showed up to the same Sunday dinners. I wish you well, but I don't want to be part of your life anymore. She didn't respond. I was relieved. I used the settlement money to set up a foundation, the Catherine Brennan Memorial Fund. Provides scholarships to kids who've lost parents. Helps with college expenses, living costs, emergency funds. Everything my mother's trust fund was supposed to do for me. I can't give myself back those opportunities, but I can give them to someone else. The first scholarship went to an 18-year-old girl who'd lost her mother to cancer. When I met her to present the award, she cried. My mom wanted me to go to college, she said. She made me promise, but I didn't think I could afford it. I thought about Catherine's letters, about promises made by dying mothers. You can afford it now, I said. Your mom would be proud. She hugged me, tight and grateful. And for the first time in 38 years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to do, not trying to earn love, just giving it, the way Catherine had given it to me, the way Susan never had. The difference felt important. My grandfather died 2 years after the lawsuit settled, peacefully, in his sleep, same as my grandmother. I was holding his hand. He'd asked me to be there, said he didn't want to be alone. Thank you, he whispered, near the end, for forgiving me, for not hating me for keeping secrets. I squeezed his hand. You kept them because Catherine asked you to, because you thought it was protecting me. I understand that now. He smiled, weak but genuine. She loved you so much. You look like her, you know. Same eyes, same determination. She would have been so proud of the man you became. He died an hour later. I inherited his house, his car, his savings, modest amounts. Nothing like the trust fund that had been stolen. But it came with love instead of obligation. Came with years of support and honesty. Came with his presence at the cemetery on the anniversary of Catherine's death every year. Came with phone calls and lunches and genuine interest in my life. That was worth more than any dollar amount. I kept his house, moved into it, sold my expensive apartment with its expensive furniture and its years of expensive loneliness. The house smelled like my grandparents, like memories and truth and the kind of home I'd been looking for my entire life. I'm 41 now, 3 years since that Sunday dinner that changed everything. I don't talk to Susan, Richard, Eric, or Nicole. They're alive, living their lives. Eric filed for bankruptcy last year. Susan and Richard downsized to a smaller house. Nicole got divorced. I know these things because mutual acquaintances mention them sometimes, expecting me to react, to care. I don't. They're strangers who happen to share some DNA. People I used to know who taught me expensive lessons about family. That's all. I spend Sunday dinners with people I've chosen. Friends from work. People from the foundation. A woman I've been seeing for 6 months named Rebecca who thinks my eyes are kind and doesn't care about my bank account. We cook together, watch movies, talk about things that matter. She knows about Catherine, about the lawsuit, about all of it, and she doesn't think I'm damaged. Just honest. That feels revolutionary. The foundation has given out 37 scholarships now. One for every year Catherine didn't get to live. We're planning to expand next year. Add mentorship programs. Support groups for kids who've lost parents. Everything I wish I'd had. Everything Catherine would have wanted me to have. I think about her often. Wonder what she'd think of the man I've become. Wonder if she'd be disappointed that it took me so long to stop chasing the wrong people. But then I read her letters again. The ones I keep in a frame on my desk. And I remember what she wrote. That being an adult means being brave enough to ask questions. Means failing and trying again. Means forgiving yourself. I've done all of that. Failed spectacularly at family. Tried again with people who actually wanted me. Forgiven myself for taking so long to see the truth. I think she'd understand. I think she'd be proud. Last week, I went back to the cemetery. Catherine's grave with its simple stone. I brought flowers. Sat on the grass the way I'd done 3 years ago. But this time, I wasn't crying. Wasn't grieving. Just visiting. The way you visit family. "Hi, Mom," I said. First time I'd called her that out loud. Felt right. Natural. "I wanted to tell you about the foundation. We just funded our biggest scholarship yet. Full ride to MIT for a kid who lost both parents in a car accident. He's studying engineering. Wants to design safer cars. You would have loved him. He's got your determination." The wind picked up. Moved through the trees. Sounded almost like an answer. "I met someone," I continued. "Rebecca. She's a teacher. Like you wanted to be. She's kind and funny and she thinks I'm worth her time. Not my money. Just me. I'm taking it slow. Learning how to trust that someone can want me without an ulterior motive. But it's good. Really good. I think you'd like her." I touched the stone. Warm now from the afternoon sun. "Thank you," I whispered, "for the letters, for loving me, for trying to protect me even after you were gone, for showing me what family is supposed to feel like. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand, but I get it now. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who stands by you when the truth comes out. Who loves you for existing, not for what you can provide. I've got that now. Finally. And it's because of you. Everything good in my life is because you loved me first. So thank you. For everything." I stood up, brushed grass off my jeans, looked at the stone one more time. Catherine Marie Brennan, beloved daughter and mother. And I added silently, beloved mother of Jason, who taught him what love looks like, even from a distance, even through letters written on a deathbed, even across 37 years of silence. That kind of love doesn't disappear, transforms, becomes foundations and scholarships and the courage to walk away from people who don't deserve you. Becomes the ability to recognize real family when you finally find it. Becomes peace. And I'm peaceful now, for the first time in my life. Not because I have everything figured out, but because I finally know who I am. Jason Brennan, Catherine's son. And that's enough. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Before you go, I've left 2 more stories here on your screen. Both from men who discovered that family isn't always who you're born to. It's who stands by you when the truth comes out. Click on whichever one calls to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it's like to be the outsider looking in, that notification bell is your invitation. Until tomorrow, remember, your story matters, even if they tried to erase it.